Somebody joined in.
Yes, Liam Farrell. So, welcome to the Publishing Lounge. I'm Marcy Bond. I am the CEO and founder of Wild Child Publishing and Freya's Bower, and I am the host. Today, I have with me Joseph J. Christiano. He is a horror author, and we were also expecting Patrick Royal, but I'm not sure. I hope he's doing okay. I'm concerned that he may not. So, Joseph, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and where they can find you?
Okay. Well, I live in Connecticut. Um, I've loved horror since I was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. Um, Anything that was scary, anything at all. Didn't matter what it was. Didn't matter. Old movies from the Universal horror movies. Dracula and Frankenstein, and or newer movies at the time. Duel by Spielberg.
Hmm.
I watched that. It was like an ABC movie of the week in like 1973 or 1974, and that was the first time my mother told me. I sat in front of the TV, dead silent the whole time. I focused on the TV. I was fascinated by it, and I've been a horror fan ever since. So if I was going to be an author, if I was going to write something, it was going to be horror.
Ironically, remember how I ended up editing your book?
Yes, you did.
And uh, uh, the thing is I'm not a big horror fan, and I'll tell you why. Because I have nightmares that make most horror, I think any horror I've ever seen, seem like child's play. So when I was a child, that's how it was. I don't really have them so much anymore, but when I was a kid, so it's hard for me. It's like I don't feel like I need to give my imagination any more fodder. you know,
Okay.
Now my nightmares tend to be more where we go somewhere and as a family, and then my daughter disappears and I can't find her.
Oh, geez.
So, so that's the kind of, those are the kind of nightmares I have now. But before that, so Jen says she saw Nightmare on Elm Street at 10, so horror doesn't scare her. Politics, however.
Well, Nightmare on Elm Street, what, 84? Let's see, I was almost out of high school, so screw you, Nixon. Still old.
So I want to welcome Connie.
Hi,
Thank you, Connie, for coming in. And so, when did you write? Was The Last Battleship your first book, or had you written other books before that?
It was my first serious book. I'd written really bad short stories that I thought were genius, and looking back, they're unreadable. It was the first time that I sat down with the intention of writing a full-length novel, and I had no idea what to expect. Never done it before. Had no experience with it. Didn't have anybody I could ask.
Right.
So I really had no idea what I was getting in for. It was a learning experience. The first novel was a very productive learning experience. I didn't know anything about publishing or even writing.
Right.
And now I think I still don't know much, but I know a lot more than I
did. It's a big industry, so there's actually quite a bit to learn about the publishing industry. I feel like even though I've been in the industry since '99, that I still am learning all of the time. So, see, and I'm going to bring it up closer. This is his book. Can you see it?
That's my first book. Yay.
Yeah.
Cover by Taria Reid.
Yeah, she did a fabulous job.
She did.
And it's quite good if you like horror. A little too creepy for me, but that's okay.
I'll give everybody listening a perfect example of what to expect. My first novel, it's done. The editing is done. The cover's done. Everything is done. We have a publication date like a week away. And I get a phone call from Marcy. And it's like, no, you have to change this, and you have to change this, and this line is terrible. You have to rewrite it. And I the one line that you wanted me to get rid of was my favorite line in the book.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Favorite line, and you said, "Oh, it's authorial intrusion. Get rid of it." And I said, "Ah." Right, but I was trying to, the editor let it slip by, so I thought I was safe. I knew it was wrong. I knew I wasn't supposed to have it in there, but I kind of like, I snuck one by him, and then you called and threw cold water on me. So thanks.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I tend to be picky, or I mean, I want the book to be. I want when we publish it, I want it to be the best that it can be for the author and for us, so it's all about, that's what it's all about. And so Dr. Farrell was asking if it was a graphic novel, and no, the average independent press publishes their books at it's 6x9, and we either do 5x8 or 6x9, and that's because most of us do what's called print on demand. And the reason we do print on demand is because it's more cost effective than doing a whole. Otherwise, you'd have to make it cost effective, you'd have to buy 500 to 1,000 copies of a book, and that just does not make sense to do it. I'd rather not. I don't want my garage to be a warehouse, although it kind of is, but I don't want it to be a warehouse of books. And then, we can use places like CreateSpace or go through Ingram's for the distributors rather than using our garage as the distributor and signing up through Amazon and being a seller through Amazon. I'd rather not do that. I don't want to deal with having to distribute it. So that's why they tend to be bigger. Also, Jen said that we have the best editors. I had to say that out loud, and I want to thank you.
My editor was Gina Verastro.
Yes.
She was fantastic. She was absolutely fantastic. And she made a suggestion that made all the sense in the world, given in the context of that story, that had never occurred to me. And at that point, I'd been living with that story for probably 3 years, 3.5 years at that point. And she made a suggestion. I said, "Oh my God, that never occurred to me." And it made perfect sense. So I added it in just because she was absolutely right. So
well, that's what good editors do, to be honest. So Jim has a question for you. He says, "I'm not a visual horror fan. I love the great old horror movies where the creeps came from suspense building. Is that how a good horror book should come across?"
Yes. Yeah. Excuse me. I'm not a fan of blood and gore and Friday the 13th and that nonsense. I don't write like that. I don't enjoy that. I much prefer atmosphere. I'd rather have just something really spooky, even if nothing happens in that scene, just to have it spooky and to succeed in describing it that way. That's a much better way to build suspense and to get the reader on edge than, the knife comes down and stabs her 25 times. That's boring. That's not, I wouldn't want to read it. I wouldn't want to watch it, and I won't write it. So yes, I believe that it's much better to build suspense slowly through atmosphere, through thoughts and dialogue than it is really any other way.
I agree. I think if I were to watch horror movies, I'd rather watch like a Hitchcock, something along that vein, where it's the psychological horror, where it's really, really scary. And then some of these slasher movies. When I was in high school, I went with a group of friends to see, I think it was like Friday the 13th part 20 gazillion, whatever it was. I don't remember. You know what I mean? They'd done so many. And the only way I could get through it was I have to become very clinical because otherwise I can't handle all the blood and gore. And I can remember one scene where there's Jason and he has this little butcher knife and there's this girl and he's down there like stabbing her boyfriend or whatever. And there's this girl with this I want to say machete in her hand. And she's running up and down the stairs screaming. And I'm like, seriously? I literally said this out loud. Go down and decapitate him. Are you that stupid? You know, I mean, and everybody looked at me and I'm like, okay, so I really shouldn't be watching these horror movies because the logic, there was no logic there. It was completely stupid.
Now, those kind of horror movies, the slasher movies, especially from the 80s, they don't invite critical thinking. You got to turn your brain off if you're going to watch them. And they can be fun in that context. If you're just mindless fun and you just, I want to zone out for a while, I don't want to think about anything, throw on Friday the 13th Part 7. You don't think to follow it. There's no story.
Right.
Just turn off your brain because otherwise you're gonna go nuts trying to figure out why they did that. Why didn't they do this? You can't do that. You drive yourself nuts.
Now, Jen wants to know if you have favorite horror writers.
Just in the genre of horror. Well, I mean, Stephen King. I mean, come on. But beyond him, Henry James is not really known as. I mean, he doesn't really have a reputation as being a horror author, but the man wrote The Turn of the Screw, which is one of the scariest stories in the history of the human race. Paul, can't go wrong with Paul, ever. So those would probably be my top three. And then, of course, the classics, Mary Shelley, Bram Stoker. The people who got the Gothic horror correctly.
Here comes Patrick. Yay! Let's see. Hopefully we'll be able to see him. So yeah, they were talking about how they like good zombie movies, and I don't watch those. Well, I don't watch horror, so I don't watch any of that. I'm not missing anything.
You're a wuss. I just watched
I am.
Best show on TV.
Walking Dead. No, you know what? The best show on TV is The Big Bang Theory. So.
All right, that's a very good show. But I mean, come on, Horror Story. That's genius.
Well, I actually, I think before The Walking Dead even came on, I had a nightmare about zombies, but it was about these. It was about these snails that were like infected with a zombie virus.
Snails.
And yes, I know it sounds weird, but it sounds weird. And I don't know how it was something like their slime. If they touched you with their slime, it would infect you with the zombie virus. And people were turning into zombies. So it was like, okay, this is just not working for me. Snabies. I don't know what snabies is. And Patrick, we're not seeing you.
I don't know what's going on.
I'm hoping that you were able to come on. Snail zombies. Yes. But it was actually pretty creepy. Oh, Jim, you're a cross between, Zeta says you're a cross between Sheldon and Howard. That's not much of a compliment, Jim. That's pretty funny. I would say, though, that you have better personal skills than either of those. So both of those guys. So you don't know Jim. So yeah, you'd hope so.
Adam. But I'll tell you what, Nixon, I want to see snail zombies trending when this is all over.
Snail zombies.
Trending.
Well, you know what I later found out? So I was telling someone the nightmare, and they were saying Hypnotoad. They were saying that there actually is something like that where there is some type of something like a snail or something that or something that like mice will eat that turns them into zombies. So there is stuff like this. Oh, why am I? Here we go. Yes. No one ever calls unless I'm busy on the blab. So every single blab, there's like the phone ringing in the background. It's so typical. Hopefully Patrick can get in. So your favorite, there you are. Yay! Good to see you, Patrick.
Good to see you, Marcy.
You've gotten furry from your pictures. Look at this. Both of you are furry. What's this about? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Hipster beards. I get it. Are you a hipster, Joe?
No, and it's winter.
That's winter.
Well, I'll be clean shaven opening day of baseball season like I am every year.
Is that like how the women also don't shave their legs, so they become clean shaven?
Yeah, time of year up here look like Chewbacca.
Well, it keeps you warm, right?
Beard. Shut up, Nixon. And it's like 30 degrees, and that's a warm day.
That's what scarves are for. Well, doesn't the ice or the water get into your beard and then it freezes and that makes it colder? Or does that insulate you?
I don't have a ZZ Top beard.
You tweeted that we were talking about snail zombies. That should be your next horror book about snail zombies.
You could break both your legs and still outrun them. That's not.
Not if they're. I don't remember. It was like there were so many of them. It was hard to get away from them. I don't know if that makes sense. They were multiplying like really, really fast. So they were everywhere, covering everything. And the only way I got away was I can fly in my dreams. So I flew away. But then you can't land anywhere because they're covering every single surface.
Oh, that's tragic. Yeah, if I sent that manuscript in, you would personally reject it.
I would so reject it.
The submissions editor wouldn't even get a chance to reject it. You'd be all over it.
Well, did you notice how it's never been written?
Oh, yeah, I wonder why. As long as it's not about spiders. Yeah, Jen, I will never write a book about spiders. I hate them.
You hate spiders?
Can't deal with spiders. Not even like the giant ones in movies. I mean like just tiny little one like in my bathtub or something. I freak. I'm not into spiders.
I like spiders.
I'm not into spiders. Nope.
See, spiders don't bother me.
In England.
Matter of fact, I will save spiders. I'll hold them in my hands and carry them out the house.
Nope. In England, they're growing big in England because it's so damp over there. I mean, you could put a saddle on them and ride them.
They grow them big in England? Really? Is that true, Jim?
I
don't know. You were born there, Joe?
In London, yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow, I don't remember seeing spiders while I was over there, but maybe I just wasn't paying any attention, or I wasn't anywhere where they were. So
the British don't kill them; they consider them good luck. If you have like one of those giant hairy ones in your house, that's good luck to them. To them.
Well, we used to catch tarantulas when I was a kid.
No. Well,
no.
Up here, Connecticut doesn't have spiders like that. That's your neck of the woods. You can have them.
Well, as long as you don't frighten them or make them mad, they're actually quite nice.
How can you tell?
How can you tell? Well, you just be gentle with them.
Yeah, no.
No. So, other than Connecticut, where can people find you online, Joe?
I don't have a website for myself just because I just haven't gotten around to it, and I have to come up with a better name than like josephjchristiano.com because that's too long. I wouldn't want to type that, let alone asking somebody else to do it. So I don't have one of those. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook.
Oh, look at that. jjc.com, she said. If it's available.
Oh.
Better snatch that up.
Yeah. Hey, Jen, do me a favor and see if it's open. Myself, got me tied up doing a blab right now. Yeah, on Facebook, it's... Yeah, see? False hope, Nixon. Thanks. On Facebook, it's Joseph J. Christiano, author. On Twitter, I don't even know what my Twitter handle is. I never use it. J. Christiano 1967, I think. I think that's it.
Good. jjchristiano.com is open.
Oh, all right.
That would work.
That might work. Except that now I sound like JJ Walker.
Who cares? It's JJ Cristiano, and it fits.
I know some people listening in here might not be old enough to remember JJ Walker, but yeah, I remember that show. I'm sure Marcy does.
Yes, I do. I know much. Yeah. Well, see, then it would be only certain people who would remember, and not everybody. And who are you aiming for? Who is your audience, Joe?
My audience is just, adult fans of horror, preferably like gothic horror. I don't go in for blood and guts. I mean, I've written some scenes that got bloody, but that's not what my books are about. So, so anybody who likes like gothic horror, that's my audience, but it's not for kids. I don't write for little ones. I don't know how. I wouldn't know how to write a children's book.
I once read a children's horror book, and Patrick's back. Yay. I'm sorry. I locked you out. I didn't mean to. And then I forgot I had locked you out. But I once read a part of a children's horror book, not yours, Patrick, and within the first chapter, I was rooting for the killer to kill all of them.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, this is probably not a good book, right? That's not good if you want all of them to die. So, and I'm not that bloodthirsty. Well, maybe a little bit, but not that much. Oh, what's that noise?
I don't know.
Is that you, Patrick?
Yeah, it must be my TV and my wife's got on in the other room. She's turning it down.
Oh, good. Well, it's good to see you.
You too, Marcy.
I was worried maybe something had happened because I know you've had some issues with your back.
Yeah, well, I got off later than I was supposed to, so at work.
Oh, that happens. That does happen. So, Patrick, could you tell the people who are watching a little bit about yourself so they know who you are and where to find you online? Not necessarily at home. Although you could say you're from Kentucky, but
Well, originally I'm from northern Indiana. I lived in Kentucky for 10 years, and then I'm back into Indiana now. And I'm glad I am. I write horror. I love, anything from Stephen King. He's been my idol all this time. And hopefully one of these days somebody will make a movie out of my books.
So it sounds like, what's your favorite Stephen King novel? The two of you, I wonder if you have the same Stephen King novel. I know it destroyed clowns for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
It is your favorite.
It's in probably my top 5. I don't know if I have a favorite one, because there are some that I just thought were awful, but then there were some that I thought were genius. I don't know if I could point to one. Like Pet Sematary is in my top 5 for sure. I thought Under the Dome was genius. Forget the TV series; that was pitiful. But the novel was wonderful.
Yeah.
So the TV destroyed this Under the Dome.
Yeah, Under the Dome, the TV series sucked, but the novel was awesome. That was a clinic on how to write a novel.
Oh wow! So Jen wants to know how long you've been writing, Patrick. I guess she knows how long you've been writing, Joe. So
for about over 20 years.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I started when I was young.
I know you.
Go ahead, Mars.
Go ahead.
I just said I started when I was young, and I just never stopped.
I know you also write poetry.
Yeah, that's just something I'm dabbling in. I don't take it serious.
Do you write anything else besides horror, Joe?
No. I mean, I do have a couple of stories in me that are not horror, but that's horror is what I like the most. When I go to the bookstore, that's what I'm looking. Usually if it's fiction, I'm looking in horror. Because that's just what I like. But I do have a couple of stories in me that are not horror, but I don't know if I'll ever do them. I might not. I don't have any burning desire to do it.
Do you like the psychological horror, Patrick, or because Joe likes more of the gothic horror where it's really more psychological and there's a buildup of the suspense and it gets scarier and scarier and scarier as you go along just from the suspense. Or do you like more of the hack and slash?
No, I'm more of the psychological stuff. You really don't need all that blood and gore to get to your audience. The build up, the suspense to take you to get there. That's where all it really gets scary. And if you notice if you notice most of my books, it takes you into the characters' minds a lot.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I have to agree. I think that when you leave stuff to people's imagination, a lot of times our imagination is worse than you could ever write in a book, because it'll become much more vivid than if you try to describe it. So yeah, I completely agree with that. I was telling Joe earlier that I would rather if I were to watch horror, which I'm not a horror, I'm a total wimp and I totally admit it. But if I were the type of horror, I would watch more along the lines of like Hitchcock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Than the hacker slashers. So, I mean, heck, I didn't even like watching Sharknado because of all the blood and guts. I just. So
that kind of scary, sharks and animals. I don't really. That doesn't really appeal to me. I'm more of the what's in the dark hiding under your bed type of deal. That's what I'm more into. The real things that scare you to death as a child, but sometimes carries on over into your adult life also. Like the dark. Anything can be in the dark. Nobody knows what's in the dark. So I mean, if a noise pops up, it could scare the heck out of you. So, and you don't even know what it is, but you're running for the hills.
Well, I grew up in like a haunted house, so we had a lot of stuff happen there. That was very interesting.
Yeah,
But have either of you had any experiences like that with ghosts or anything?
oh, definitely, definitely. Yeah. Actually, my wife and I, when we were teenagers, we both lived into this house at separate times, and yeah, we both experienced some really wild stuff.
What about you, Joe?
Not like nothing like a haunted house or anything like that. I mean, like I think the same type of things that most people will go through, where you see something or um, you experience something that you can't explain right away. But I can't really say that I've felt a ghost in the house or anything like that. I've never had any kind of experience like that. Um, but yeah, little unexplained things that you can't you can't explain what just happened. But
Yeah.
and it can, and things like that can be creepy. But I can't say that I've ever had in real life, any like really intense like supernatural experiences. No.
When my mom still lives in the house, but when I was a little girl, I can remember being home alone back when you could be when you were a child. And I can remember reading a book, and I get so into, I don't know about you, but when I read books, I dive head first, and it's hard to get me out of it because I don't really listen. And I can remember sitting there and reading, and there's no one in the house, but hearing someone go, Marcy, Marcy. And it would totally pull me out of reading the book. And I'm looking around going, holy cow, okay, there's nobody here. And so we had stuff like that happen. We had doors almost hit people. I mean, so like my sister and her then boyfriend, and he was standing over by one of those huge folding doors, the really, really heavy ones from the 70s that they had on the closets.
Yeah.
Do you know which one? They slide, they open, and but they're heavy. And he was standing over there, and they were having an argument, and the door slammed and almost hit him.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's the kind of, so yeah, we can, I don't even like to watch the Ghost Adventures on TV. I'll watch portions of it, and then I'm like, no. I'm going to end up having a nightmare, and that's just not, I don't want to do that.
I publish our books.
Why? Well, I have editors who absolutely love horror, and there are people who love horror. So just because it's not my type of genre doesn't mean it doesn't do it for somebody else. And so, and they were good stories. So, I can actually enjoy a book whether I like the genre or not, if it's well told. I try to be open-minded. I'm not always, so it wouldn't be my first choice of genre. but I'm happy to publish something that is worth publishing.
All right. That's fair enough.
So, Patrick, you have 3 books with us. You have Shattered and Mind Shadows, which are 2 of a series. And you also have, I'm blanking.
Sleep Stalker.
Sleep Stalker, that's right, which is more of a YA horror, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And Sleep Stalker is probably kind of like something that I have where I have these nightmares.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sleep Stalker, it's complicated. It goes way back from a demon that was a sleep demon, and he was cast out, and he preys on these people's fears, And if you die in your sleep, you die in real life. That's all I can say about it.
Well, yeah, that's true. Now, Jim was wondering, he said this is a cliche question, but does the desire to be a horror author necessarily mean you have a morbid mind?
No. No,
not a creepy mind.
Well, I've always been one to want to scare people. Like when my kids were little, we'd be sitting there watching a movie, and it'd be nothing for me to scream out loud and scare them. Or I'd go sneak out the back door and go around, stand in front of the window as they're watching TV, and scratch on the window or peck on the window and scare them to death. That's just something out of my nature, But no, I believe in God and all that, and it has nothing to do, it has nothing to do with I want to go out and kill somebody or anything like that. No.
What about you, Joe? Are you?
I don't think you need a morbid mind to write horror. I think it's more of a pattern of thinking. When you're inspired to write a horror, when you get an idea for a horror novel, it can come from anywhere. It can come from something really nice and pretty and beautiful, but then you think like, hey, what if? And you turn that image on its ear, and you can get a horror story out of it. So I think and I've kind of trained myself to think like that. Patrick maybe has too. He's been writing longer than I have, so he may be ahead of me on this. Probably is. I don't think you have. I've just trained myself to kind of think that way. But I don't think you have to have a morbid mind or even a creepy mind. But it probably doesn't hurt if you do. You're probably a step ahead of everyone else if you do have that kind of mentality.
Right. So Jen said that her dad told her not to open the closet after watching Poltergeist at 8 years old. Thanks. That would be really nice. But you know what my dad used to do? After Jaws came out, we had a swimming pool, and my dad would, if he, I don't know what you're asking, but no, it's in the bag. My child is looking for chocolate. My dad, needless to say, Jaws destroyed a lot of people's desire to swim in the ocean. And, but he would, if he got in the pool, then he would grab our ankles and drag us down to the deep end.
Ooh. Wow.
Obviously we survived, but as soon as we saw him get in the pool, all of us just exited really quick. So.
Wow. Yeah, that's
tough. Oh, you know what? I think it is in the car. I just didn't pull it out of the bag, so it's in the back. She's on a mission to find the chocolate bar.
Joseph, when you start a novel, okay, do you have it all set up from start to finish on how it's going to go, or does it change as you start writing it and other ideas more or less write itself? That's the way it happens with me. When I start, I'll have it in my head how I want it to go, but as the story goes, it totally changes on me, and before I know it, it's a total different story. Does that happen to you?
Yes. When I sit down to write and I write that first line, that first sentence, I know I have the basic story in my head. I have the beginning, and I have the end, and I have bits and pieces in the middle. So I'll have like A and Z, and then I'll have like C, J, R, but I don't have everything. But yes, as I'm writing it and more ideas come, and it would be cool if this happened, and I hadn't thought of that before. So I add that in. So yes, the story changes or it grows organically as I'm writing it. And anything that I thought was such a great idea, now it doesn't fit. I have to get rid of it. And
Right.
I've had to change some what I thought were some kind of cool little details, but they no longer fit because I came up with something I think is better than what I
Right.
initially had. So yes, the story changes constantly.
Do you ever find it hard to kill your darlings?
No, not really. My first novel, the one I did for you, I hemmed and hawed over one of the main characters. Several drafts. In one, this character lived. In this one, she died. They died in this one. They lived in this one. And I went back and forth right up until I submitted it. Right up until I hit send on that email, I was changing that character's fate because I could not decide whether or not they should survive. Yeah, that was the toughest time I ever had with killing a character.
And then that line I told you to take out.
I can still remember it. I still remember the line. Reese and Jill in the swimming pool, having a good time, just getting to like each other. The line was that scene ended with the line, they would have one more amazing time together before everything went to hell. And I loved that line. And he sent me that he said, no, that line sucks. It's authorial intrusion. It has to go. Oh, I was crushed. So I ended it on some lane like, oh, we decided we wanted to spend some more time with her. I was like, oh, this sucks. But Marcy said get rid of it, so I didn't have a choice. I'm still smarting about that. Still keeps me up at night.
See, you know why I don't read horror? Because as Jim called me, Marcy the Slasher.
Yeah, Jen.
No, Jen had to go. And she had to go walk her dogs. Her dog. Dogs? Does she have dogs, plural? I thought she only had a dog.
She has one for sure. She might have two. I don't know. I've only been to her place once, and that was like 3 years ago. She might have another one.
So both of you, so you're kind of are both of you kind of plotters, but then you end up being pantsers? Is that kind of how it works? Is you have that general idea and then the story just takes over and there it goes. Is that what I'm getting?
Used to. I don't even bother with any of that anymore. I just go with my idea and I let it develop on its own now. Because I know it's going to change. There's no reason to even go into it because, my characters are going to say, no, we're not doing that. We're going to do this. And then that's what happens.
I cannot agree more. That's exactly right. I've had that happen to me while I was writing it. And I'm like, yeah, I just got to go with the way it's going because I didn't anticipate this. And the main villain kind of in my third novel, at first he was just going to be this like kind of scummy minor character. He's going to cause some trouble later on for the main characters. He took on a life of his own and became, to this day, the favorite character I've ever written.
Wow.
And he took over. I had no intention of giving that character that much screen time. And
see, he caused you problems.
He grew up. I love that character. That's probably my favorite character that I've ever created.
My child's trying to negotiate how many pieces of chocolate she gets. She's like, can I have the whole bar? No. No, you're not getting 5. Sorry. No, I actually, I don't write that often, but I'm more of a pantser, primarily because I find that if I plot, I get bored with it, and then I'm no longer even interested in writing the story. I don't know if either of you have found that to be true at this point, or if no.
No, I don't. They don't even give me that chance. You know, I mean, they're acting on my screen, and all I can do is write down what they're doing, and so I don't even go that way anymore. I just, okay, what are you guys doing? And then it just happens. It just comes right out on the screen.
So, do either of you have favorite horror movies that have come out recently?
The Conjuring wasn't too bad. I know it's a couple of years ago. That one wasn't too bad. If you want to go back a little further, like say within the last 15 years, I could probably name a few more. But I thought The Conjuring, they did a pretty good job.
And you, Patrick?
I really don't care for the horror movies that come out now, because I don't know whether I've became desensitized to it because of what I write, but I find myself when I'm writing, when I'm watching it, to criticize the movie and say, oh no, it shouldn't. There's no way that's gonna happen. That's just too far fetched. And then my wife tells me to shut up and watch the movie.
Yep, he's exactly right. I do that.
It just doesn't scare me.
Do you find that true though now with almost every movie you watch? I mean, I find that, of course, I'm an editor, so I do that with every book I read, not on purpose. I don't like, I try not to, but it's hard not to. And then also with movies, I start critiquing the storyline and things that aren't working in the storyline.
Yep, I sure do.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the last one, no, it's not the last one I saw, but the one that sticks out is the most recent Star Wars movie. And I know. Oh, well, but the most recent Star Wars movie, and just some of the things that overall I would go see the next movie. It was still a good, entertaining movie, but there were things about it that I felt were too, it just wasn't developed enough, or it was too much like all of the original movies. Wow. See, look at this. Chocolate.
Isn't it for your dinner time over there? Don't be spoiling your appetite.
That's okay. It's almost 5, and I'm going to chew in your ear.
Thank you.
Chocolate and caramel. It's delicious. Milk chocolate and caramel.
Have either watched the series Dexter?
No, I didn't have Showtime at the time. I completely missed it. I would like to see it.
Yeah, my wife got me into that, and it's really good. But the only thing that I really hate is he narrates out of his head too much, and they're not really real thoughts. You know what I'm saying? They're just, you can tell that, they're just not. I can't explain it. It's just they're not real thoughts. They're just more of a narration type deal.
Oh yeah, I've seen like the Sin City movies, something like that. Maybe, have you seen those?
I haven't seen those.
Oh, okay.
No.
It sounds like it's the same thing.
Do you do either of you, Buffy Blondie 67 wants to know if either of you watch The Walking Dead?
Best show on TV?
Yes. Yes.
The best show on TV.
I haven't the series, but yeah. Very, very good. Yeah, very good.
I've been following it since the first issue of the comic book, because I I've read and collect comic books my whole life, and I've been with The Walking Dead since the first issue of the series. And then when I heard it was going to be a TV series, I was psyched. I thought it'll never, AMC will cancel it. There's no way they're going to allow this to happen. And I was delightfully wrong. A lot of people love it. It's the #1 show on TV. I think it's genius.
I think if it weren't about zombies, I'd consider it. Poor Joe.
I'm going to start a zombie book tomorrow, and I'm going to submit it to you, and I cannot wait.
and I'll send it on to my acquisitions editor, and I won't have to do more than just read them.
Is it still Erica?
Yes, it's still Erica.
Still
Erica. Yeah. No, it's I guess I've gotten kind of. I used to watch a lot of the CSI shows a long time ago when they first came out, and then probably after about a year or two, I got tired of it because it was the same trope over and over and over again, and it was so predictable, that and Buffy loves those, and that's great. Obviously, a lot of people really like them, so they stay on. And now it just seems like for me, there's a lot of the vampires and the witches and the paranormal shows. And I don't know if either of you watch like Once Upon a Time or, I don't know what the other ones are. Oh, Buffy likes Once Upon a Time. Or is it something, have either of you seen like iZombie?
That's based on a comic book. I've read the comic. I wasn't really crazy about it, so I didn't watch the series.
I've only seen portions of it.
I Am Legend was really good. And that's a comic book too, right?
No, the movie with Will Smith?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a novel by Richard Matheson.
Okay.
He wrote like half the episodes of the Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone. But the Will Smith version was pretty good. It was a little different from the book, but it stood on its own. I thought it was pretty well done.
Mm-hmm.
See, now I liked the Twilight Zone, and those were really creepy.
They didn't have zombies.
They didn't have zombies. There wasn't the blood and gore or anything like that. But it was, you walked away a lot of times very unsettled by what was happening. Now, I wonder if either of you know that you might not. This is a very obscure movie, but I remember seeing, it's a very old movie. I remember seeing it when I was a very young child, and it stuck with me because there was, I remember like the last scene of these little creatures that like little, that came out from behind the curtains or under a bed or something and grabbed the main character and dragged her away. And that just, I don't remember, it was, I want to say they were like brownies or gnomes or, you know what I mean? Something along that line. And you look like you've heard of it. And that's the only thing I remember because I think I was only like 5 or 6 years old when I saw it. And that kind of traumatized me a little bit.
It sounds familiar. That setup sounds really familiar. I can't picture it, but I can almost picture it.
Yeah.
That's going to drive me nuts.
Just something to consider. You'll probably remember when we're done, or maybe
I'll wake up at like 4 a.m. and I'll remember it.
And then you can tell me what it was on Facebook so that I know.
4 a.m.
Thanks. Of course, your 4 a.m. would be my 1 a.m. Under the Bed, the Outer Limits episode. He said, that might have been it.
It might be because the image I kind of have in my head is black and white for sure. So
yes, it's black and white. It was definitely black and white.
I'm gonna have to look. I'll look that up to see if that's what it was.
Yes, they were like little goblins or something.
And Jim saved me from having to wake up in the middle of the night and call you.
Thank you, Jim.
Dawn of the Dead scared me to death when I was a teenager. We went to the midnight show. Well, me and my wife now, but we were just dating back then, and she could not. She can't stand zombies. I'm sorry, Joseph. She can't stand zombies. They're just stupid. They walk slow, and all you do is run away from them.
He's not wrong.
But it scared me to death. I mean, I can remember being young and going down an old dirt road and just thinking, what if people just started walking towards your car? I mean, that's just scary.
Yeah.
Me, it is.
Yeah. The original Dawn of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead was, I'm not sure, I remember what year it came out, late 70s. That was genius. That was pure genius. That was George Romero, who invented zombies. What we think of as zombies, those are a creation of George Romero, and the man's a genius. And I worship at the altar of George Romero.
I can honestly say I'm not happy he created zombies, but so Joe, your book, The Last Battleship, it's actually a ghost story. Yes. And I would say it's pretty creepy.
Amazon said they had a nightmare attributable to that book, and that was like the highest compliment I could have gotten. I was over the moon. I gave somebody that's awesome.
That's awesome. You gave somebody a nightmare.
That's awesome. Love it. No higher compliment for a horror author than you gave me a nightmare. Wonderful.
What about, did you see that one, Attack of the Giant Spiders, or something that came out in like the late 70s, 80s?
No,
it was these.
No, I don't watch spiders.
You don't watch spiders. Did you see that, Patrick?
I don't know if it's the same one that I'm thinking of, where the guy, he falls into this big old web and a spider comes down at him. I don't know if it's the same one that you're talking about, but that's the one I saw.
No, these were spiders that they looked like tarantulas, but they actually came from outer space. And then they turned into these gigantic spiders.
Oh.
And I don't remember what it was called.
It was called the Giant Spider Invasion.
Okay.
Early 70s. And the only reason I know about this movie is because it was harpooned on Mystery Science Theater 3000. It was so bad that it got that treatment. That show.
But when you were a little kid, and I went with like a girlfriend or something who wanted to see it, and I was not thrilled.
Skipper from Gilligan's Island was in it.
I think you're right. I mean, I vaguely remember it.
He was a sheriff, I think.
Okay, so Buffy wants to know, she said that vampire one where they are way up north, what is it, 30 nights?
30 Days of Night.
30 Days of Night.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember seeing that.
That was a comic book, too. Yeah, that was Steve Nichols. We're actually friends on Facebook. I've never met him in person, but we're friends on Facebook.
Good night, Buffy. Thanks for stopping in. Yeah, I have to agree, that was a nasty movie. See, I like spiders, and that gave me nightmares. But it didn't stop me from holding tarantulas, so.
Yeah, no.
No. Are you're with Jen on this one?
100%. Jen and I living in the Northeast, that's probably what it is. We're just not into spiders. You
never gonna happen.
People, you guys get into them. I can't.
Those little jumping spiders are cute.
Nope.
No.
Not a spider alive or dead. That's cute.
No, they're good. They eat things that we don't like.
Yeah, they'll eat you too.
No, they won't. There's not a spider big enough to eat any of us. But that's neither here nor there. See, that could be your next horror book about spiders. Spiders or zombie snails. That's it.
Yeah, zombie snails. Yeah. Yeah, tell Eric Freeman to look out for that. It's coming her way in an email soon.
Zombie spiders. Well, see, it was really this. The snails carried a, I want to say, like an amoeba that got into your system that then ate your brain and turned you into a zombie.
Nice.
What can I say? It was, you have these kind of.
There was
It's just
like that, in like the mid '80s, where like slugs from space turned people into zombies.
oh,
It's an awful movie called Night of the Creeps. And
Night of the Creeps.
Night of the it's dreadful. It's one of those movies that's so bad you have to watch it.
Like Sharknado.
Well, yeah, kind of. Except that this movie actually tried to be serious,
Oh,
and it's almost like an Ed D. Wood Jr. movie. It's like
okay.
almost Plan 9 from outer space.
Oh God.
But it's
Okay.
bad. It's like one of those. It's so bad it's good.
Right.
Kind of like that.
So, are there any outside influences that are reflected in your writing? And where do your ideas come from? Is it just from reading other things, or are you like me? Sometimes what happens, the story starts with me just by asking, what if?
Mm-mm. I'll tell you, and you're going to think I'm crazy because my wife really thought I was flipping my lid. It's actually where Sleep Stalker came in at, because I left for work early one morning, and it was real foggy out. And I come down to a stoplight, and I'm waiting for it to turn green, and this car goes by the other way, and I could have swore there was no driver in it. I could have swore this. And so the light turns green. I go through it. I get about maybe a block down the road, and there's this kind of a scratchy, like an ink pen scratchy all over like a paper. If you just took it, went all directions. But it was also like a bush, and it was gray. And it just floated above the ground. And I passed it, and then I had to stop and turn around and look. Of course, it wasn't there anymore. And as I'm driving, it was a real windy day. The grass is blowing and looking like waves in an ocean. It's just like this. I mean, the whole way to work really set up for this story. And that's what I went with, and that's how I came out with it. But yeah, I had no clue where the stuff even came from. It was just like a premonition that had to be told. Just wild.
That sounds wild. What about you, Joe?
Well, I think every work of fiction starts with what if. But for The Last Battleship, I had an idea for like a high seas ghost story, but I didn't really have anything solid yet. Certainly nothing to start working on, but just an idea. And I was actually reading a book about the Titanic, which is like one of my childhood passions. I've been a fan of that since I was probably 6. And I was reading this book, and it was about everything we thought we knew, based on survivor testimony at the time that turned out to be wrong.
Wow.
It just got me thinking that, if a tragedy occurs and you're the only eyewitness, you can spin that story any way you want, and no one can refute you. There's nobody to say like, no, that's not how it happened, because nobody else saw it. And that, when I was reading that book about the Titanic, as soon as that thought occurred to me, I had The Last Battleship. I knew what was. I had my story. So the inspiration, the story ideas can come from anywhere at any time. I don't walk around with a pad and paper in my back pocket in case I get an idea.
Right.
that's pointless. That sometimes, you know, I can go 2 or 3 days with nothing, and then I can get 10 ideas in one day, and most of them are junk. But there's always that one, maybe that one idea that turns out to be workable as a novel.
Oh, that's, you know, do you ever find that sometimes you're writing a story? Well, this would be horror though, but I mean, certain aspects that require research, and you're writing the story, and then you do a little bit of research, and then and it's maybe something you don't know anything about, and what you've researched and what you wrote in your book are actually like right on point. Do you ever find that happening?
Oh, me?
Mm-hmm. Or both of you, either of you.
My last novel was about a heroin addict who goes into rehab. I know nothing about heroin. I've never even seen it in person. I don't know anybody who was on heroin, so I had to do a lot of research on it. And then, like, I did know a few people who had gone through rehab, so I checked with them about, you know, like the mundane little details of rehab. So I was able to get some authoritative information from them. But as far as like drug addicts, I you know, heroin addicts, I had to do all that research online because I know nothing about that. Thankfully, I suppose. You know, sometimes, I mean, you have to research. You have
right.
To on your other, you know, because somebody will read your book who knows what you're talking about, and if you don't, they're gonna be taken right out of the story.
What about?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marcy.
No, I was just going to say, what about you, Patrick?
Yeah. Anything I've ever researched, I've always found out I don't know anything. So.
No, I was just wondering, because I've talked to a few people that this has happened to, and when I wrote Hieroglyphs, which is my paranormal that deals with Egypt, and when I actually started writing it, and some of the stuff that I was writing about the plot, I wrote about a woman who was a pharaoh, and then I wrote about I was writing about how she died and everything like that. And then I found out that there actually had been a woman who was a pharaoh. I wasn't aware of that because that wasn't something, this was when I originally wrote it, was like back in 2000. So it was the very beginning of the internet, and there wasn't all of this dissemination of information, right? So what you learned was you either had to be passionate about that particular subject and do a lot of research in the library. It wasn't just at the click of your fingertips, really. And then when I started to write about her death and how it came about, and then after that, I started doing the research, and the research backed up what my fiction book was writing. And it was kind of like, okay, this is a little, this is a little bizarre, but so I've talked to other people who have had similar things happen where they were writing what they thought was fiction. And it was almost like they had tapped into something about what they tapped into something else that gave them the information. So I was just curious if that happened, because I know you probably did some research about The Last Battleship, because it does have information in there in regards to World War II. And so there's some historical, and so you may be familiar with some of the history, but at the same time, there may have been details you weren't familiar with, but somehow you had them in there anyway. Do you know what I'm saying? It's almost like your creative mind taps into something.
Well, these days, because of how easy it is to get online and look, you have no excuse whatsoever for not doing research.
That's true.
You have no excuse. And if it's something that you should have researched and you were too lazy to do it, and it turns out that you were way off about some back, you're going to look like an idiot.
Yeah.
It's not like it was 30, 40 years ago when you had to go down to a library and find books and look them up and read and find out what you had to do. You just click a mouse. If you're too lazy to do that, then you shouldn't be writing.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Jim wants to know, do you think there's anything original left in horror?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's anything original about it, but it can definitely be told in a different way. And everybody's got a different perception on what they want that story to be. So, to be original, no, I think everything's been done, really.
I probably agree with that. I would expand it to say that I don't know if there's anything original left in any genre. I think it's all been done. I mean, this is 2016, where people have been writing these stories for literally hundreds of years. I think what we have now are variations on a theme.
Yeah.
And I mean, which is still fine, perfectly fine. It's a perfectly legitimate. You could tell perfectly legitimate story, by variations on a theme. But yeah, I mean, every genre has been played out. There is no original romance out there, or Western, or action, or horror, or anything. It's all been played out.
Yeah.
We got to the game late. We should
look even on television and the movies. They're redoing everything.
Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah.
I personally think that's unfortunate, because I think that there are a lot of really good stories out there that have a different take and would probably do really well. That we don't, and sometimes they do these remakes and they just trash them. So God, I hope they never do remake like they never do a remake of like Gone with the Wind, or you know what I mean, The Wizard of Oz, or any of the real classic, the real classic movies.
They might, sooner or later there probably will be a remake of Gone with the Wind. If somebody believes there's money to be made, they'll do it. They'll do it. Nothing is sacred.
That's true. But I'm just saying, that I really feel like that they need to be looking, because there are a lot of really fabulous books and stories out there that you don't really need to remake something in order to make the money.
You live in California? Take our books.
I do.
To the Weinstein brothers and hook us up.
I do live in California, and I do know how it works down here, unfortunately.
Knock on Harvey Weinstein's door, hand him our book.
That's right. Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah. That's how it works. Anyway, I really want to thank you guys for coming out today and chatting with me. I want to be sure that you let everybody know where they can find you online and where they can find your books online.
Patrick, go ahead.
Just punch in Patrick Royal and you'll find me. I'm there. Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, Wild Child Publishing. I'm there.
I didn't think about that before. He's right. All you have to do is Google my name, and it'll all come up. All my novels on Amazon, or my Facebook page, my Twitter handle. That will all come up just by Googling Joseph J. Christiano. It's all there.
And you can also find me at wildchildpublishing.com, freyasbauer.com, marcybond.com. You can Google my name. It's not a common name. And I will come up. I am on Facebook, and I am on Twitter. I am on Pinterest. I am on a lot of places, Google Plus, LinkedIn, all of these different places. And so thank you for coming in today. And I hope that you will subscribe to my channel, and you will come back and join me next week as I interview a new group of people. Thank you, Joe and Patrick, for coming today.
for having me.
Thank you, Marcy.